Hello friends, welcome. Friends, in my channel, my endeavor has been to tell you the facts without being biased. Now friends, in this video, I plan to give you a historical perspective of BSNL. How BSNL was performing in past, what were the events that led to BSNL becoming a weaker organization, and how the current strategy of BSNL to deploy 4G and then migrate to 5G is going to get impacted because of the past strategies and the decision that BSNL has taken. So this video is going to be very interesting because friends, BSNL has now become a only option for those value customers who are now impacted by tariff hike. And the private operators, especially the market leaders, are continue to raise tariff, and those customers who cannot afford to pay those higher tariff will have only recourse on BSNL, because BSNL is largely funded by the government and they can give those customers an option to enjoy services at a lower tariff, and that's why BSNL is pretty important. But unfortunately, friends, BSNL currently at this stage, not because that they don't have enough funds and the government support, but from a strategic point of view, the decisions that BSNL has taken to deploy their network from a current path of 4G, and then when they're going to migrate their network to 5G, when I tell you the whole story, you will find that it has been a very unfortunate part because BSNL has taken some wrong decisions. So this video, friends, will be in a constructive manner to tell you the whole story from the beginning till now, and what likely is going to happen in future, and what possible course correction that BSNL needs to take in order to become a more empowering company. That's the whole idea, friends, of this video. So friends, I have created a slide deck, and the title of this slide deck is how BSNL and MTNL has become irrelevant and increasingly becoming irrelevant, and what BSNL needs to do or MTNL needs to do to further reverse the current status of irrelevance and to contribute towards the growth of the economy and the country, and to serve the consumers who are in the value segment who cannot afford higher tariffs. So friends, the starting point, let's go to the history. So history is pretty important. The starting point, promising intention. If you recall, friends, in 1999, there was a migration package, right? From which led to the bankrupt telecom companies shifting from a fixed license regime to a revenue share regime. At that time, BSNL was a corporatized entity. MTNL was already into mobile, their Dolphin services. Now, this migration, which happened from the fixed license regime to a revenue share regime, was a settlement between the bankrupt operators who were losing money with the government, and the government said that they will give them the migration package provided BSNL will be given an option to enter as a fourth operator, right? Actually, it's the third operator, because fourth operator was, again, there was an option which took place in 2021, right? Sorry, 2001. So that is how BSNL entered mobile services. Then there was an access deficit charge, which BSNL was being paid in order for the private operators to use BSNL fixed line services, and that BSNL was getting compensated, because if you recall, at that particular point of time, BSNL was the only operator who had a lot of fixed line network, and the operators who were slowly expanding their services were using BSNL network to do call completion, to dial their customers who were in the BSNL's network. And BSNL was being paid is a charge called access deficit charge, and that access deficit charge became a source of profitability, but it was phased out by 2008 without any alternate support mechanism, right? And that really led to a loss of revenue for BSNL. Then there was another charge called interconnect usage charge. Now, interconnect usage charge is again, being paid by an operator to the other operator for using its network. Because whenever an operator starts its services, it has to kind of interconnect with the other operators in order to maximize the reach of the services of their customers to the overall network. Without interconnection, their network is of little value, because they don't have that kind of scale to have any viability in the market, and therefore they have to rely on other operators to complete their call. So initially, the revenue from interconnect usage charges were paid to BSNL because BSNL network was much bigger compared to other operators' network. But the market share declined and outgoing call volumes exceeded incoming calls, and they became a net payer of IUC. But IUC was abolished in 2021 and too late to help, right? And then there was another incident which took place in 2005 and 6, which led to huge exodus of good officers in BSNL. So there was an HR crisis. Why? Because the DOT wanted to push the BSNL's people who are working in BSNL to take absorption. And those officers didn't want to take absorption in BSNL because they were not too sure about the profitability of BSNL, and they were kind of very concerned about their pension. And because of that, many good officers left BSNL and joined private operators, and that resulted in diminishing of the overall moral of their human resources, and that led to huge amount of problem in decision making. So BSNL lost good officers because of this push of absorption, right? So that is one of the main event which actually led to collapse of BSNL as an organization. Good officers left. Then the 30,000 crore spectrum burden. Now, if you recall, after the 2G scam, when their entry of 14, new operators, were entered into the market at subsidized rate, that led to a huge amount of price of 3G spectrum, and BSNL MTNL was given 3G spectrum 1 year in advance. Because of that, and they were with a condition that once the auction happened in 2010, they have to pay the money for the spectrum, which is 3G spectrum and BWS spectrum, at the rate of the auction, because they were given in 2009 and auction happened in 2010. And BSNL MTNL paid around 18,000 crores was paid by BSNL, 18,500 crore, and MTNL paid 11,000 crores, and that amount broke the back of MTNL. MTNL went into a huge debt, and that company almost like is now in the collapse stage. And main reason was this, because Delhi and Mumbai was the main circles where the prices actually went very high, right? It went 10 times the reserve price, right? So BSNL also paid, and interestingly, BSNL was given spectrum in 2.5 gigahertz band, which was considered as a WiMAX spectrum, thinking that WiMAX is going to become a winning technology in the 2010 auction, and it didn't happen. Private telcos were given 2.3, where LTE and 4G became the main technology, and therefore BSNL was not able to monetize even the 2.5 gigahertz band because they fell apart from the mainstream, which was 2.3 gigahertz band. And there was a massive financial burden without any commercial viability because of this two problem. First, they paid very high price of spectrum, and they got their BWS spectrum in a different band because they got it 1 year in advance, and the government thought that the 2.5 gigahertz is going to be the mainstream band, but it didn't happen. 2.3 became the mainstream band, and therefore BSNL was caught in the wrong foot. Then came the Jio's entry, and it resetted the market. In 2016, Jio started offering 4G data and free 4G data, and VoLT shook the industry. BSNL stuck with patchy 3G and no 4G coverage. Rapid subscriber erosion. I can show you that in my chart. You will see, and other telco exited or merged, and BSNL left standing and outdated. And let me show you this. When you will see this is my chart, operator-wise subscriber trend. So if you look at this, let me just show you the yearly trend, and that is going to give you a very good understanding what happened. So if you look at this is the time frame, FY19, and you'll see that BSNL, let me just show you, I think this is market increment. I'll do it absolute. So you'll see that BSNL's subscribers, it's the total subscribers, including wireline and wireless, 113 million, then it went to 96 million, 101 million, 114 million, 123 million, 126 million, 28 million, 25 million, 21 million, 110 million, 94 million, 98 million, 98 million, right? And all other operators actually lost, means they were out of the market. You see, everybody exited the market. So this block of subscribers, right, they shifted to here, mainly here, right? And BSNL's, lost subscribers continuously because of the fact that Reliance Jio started offering free services. And if you see, Reliance Jio gained subscriber exponentially. And most of the subscriber came from either here or here, right? And that's where, and also Vodafone Idea also lost subscriber, but the accumulation of huge amount of subscriber by Reliance Jio led to, BSNL is also losing subscribers, right? So there has been rapid subscriber erosion. Rural stronghold also collapsed, and other telco exited or merged, and BSNL left standing outdated, right? Now, missed 4G window. This is very, very important, friends. BSNL just kept waiting. And I don't know, because of the political will and it was by design, I do not know. BSNL was not pushed in the 4G direction. It was kept waiting in 3G and 2G. Because in 2017-22, Airtel Jio VI built a nationwide 4G network. BSNL continued with 2G and 3G, and MTNL 3G became non-functional. 4G spectrum allocated but deployed, but deployment delayed by years. Because if you recall, in 2021, when the package was announced, the telecom package was announced, BSNL revival package was announced, but it was too little, too late, and it treated as a secondary SIM. BSNL was treated as a secondary SIM. Active user base also shrank. Now, delayed revival package. In 2019, revival package gave BSNL spectrum in 600, 2100, and 2500, additional spectrum in 2500. And the 600 thing was shifted to 700 megahertz later, and procurement was delayed because of the local equipment technology policy, right? That's why it led to a huge amount of delay in deployment of 700. Indigenous equipment mandates slowed down rollout. 4G commercial rollout began only in 2024, too little, too late, right? And then the 700 megahertz strategy was a flawed execution strategy. And let me tell you why. BSNL should never have deployed 4G network in 700. And this is the inflection point of BSNL's demise and not being able to roll out 5G. BSNL will never be successful in rolling out 5G unless they unwind their 4G network in which they have rolled out, because there is no sparking spot. And I'll explain this as you move forward in this presentation. Government handed BSNL a clean 10 megahertz of 700 megahertz band. They shifted from 600 megahertz to 700, and 700 was a 5G band. I do not know who had this idea, who gave BSNL 700 megahertz spectrum when 800 megahertz spectrum, a large quantum it, was already available, and it was not taken by the operators in two successive auctions, in 2022 and in 2024. Large quantum of 800 megahertz. It may not be in all circles 10 megahertz, but there was a large quantum which BSNL could have done 10 megahertz in many circles, and 5 megahertz was available in many circles. And as RCOM, I'll show you the chart which will make things much more clearer for the viewers. So if I go to 800 megahertz, you will see that 800 megahertz, this is Reliance Jio, pink is RCOM, right? And this, the violet is RCOM, and pink is what spectrum is available right now, right? So you'll find that in AP 10 megahertz is there, in Bihar 10 megahertz is there, in Delhi 6.25 is there. In Gujarat nothing much is not much is there. Then in Haryana there not much is there. Then in HP 7.5 is there. Then in Karnataka 6.25 is there. And then in Kerala, so you'll find that many circles, lot of spectrum is available. And once the RCOM things it was decided, then in many circles you would have got 10 megahertz of spectrum. So this 800 megahertz spectrum, if it was given to BSNL to deploy 4G, that would have changed the situation for BSNL, and RCOM resolution in NCLT should have been hastened. Somebody should have pushed the resolution of RCOM in it so that to release this spectrum to be given to BSNL, right? That would have given a better, I'll explain to you why BSNL whole problem of BSNL would have got solved if 800 megahertz spectrum was given instead of 700 megahertz for 4G. Because 800 megahertz had a better device ecosystem because Reliance Jio is already deploying 4G in 800. So these devices which were there in the market could have been leveraged by BSNL. And BSNL, since they were concentrating on value customer, they could have leveraged RCom's ecosystem on devices. Most old low-cost 4G phone didn't support band 25, which is 700 megahertz. Bundled locked carbon device will be offered in 700 megahertz band, which will further make it difficult for BSNL to migrate the 700 megahertz to 5G. And let me explain why. This is the chart which will tell you the story. Why BSNL can't monetize this spectrum. This is very, very crucial, friends. Listen to this chart properly and let me explain how this chart should be read. So you have got this bottom layer of 900 megahertz 2G, which is standing on its own. You can't use it for 4G, 5G or anything unless you dismantle your 2G network, which is not going to happen. Then there is a missing layer of 800 megahertz band, right? And this is crucial because this was the layer which should have been used for 4G. Now what you have done, you have deployed your 4G in 700 megahertz, right? Then you have another layer of 4G in 2100. Then you have got another layer of 3G in 2100 because 2100, how much spectrum BSNL has? 10 megahertz of spectrum, 5 megahertz 3G already is there because of the 2009 3G where they deployed 3G, and the new 5 megahertz which was given as a revival package where they have deployed 4G. Then 2500 currently is lying free, but they will deploy it for 4G, and we have got the 5G band of 70 megahertz of 3500 megahertz band. Now friends, let's say BSNL deploys 5G in only 3500 and they don't deploy 5G in any of the spectrum bands here. 800 they don't have, so it is out of question. Then what will happen? The coverage of 5G is going to be so short because this size of this, the width of this is kind of denoting the coverage, So it will be so short that it will be completely useless for mobile. Now somebody will say, why? Why BSNL can't deploy 5G in the 700? Because the base stations are software configurable. Because the reason is that if BSNL start, uprooting their 700 megahertz base station or configuring their 700 megahertz to 5G, then those devices which are locked onto the 700 megahertz, right? 4G devices which are locked onto the 700 megahertz, what will happen to those devices? They will have no other option but to switch to 2100 megahertz band, right? For their 4G coverage. Because the 700 megahertz band is going to be deprived of 4G, and now only layer of 4G will be what? 2100 and 2500, and you can see that these coverages are so low because there is no other option. Because these subscribers who are currently locked on to the 700 megahertz band, where they will go? They can't go to 900. They can't go to 800 because 800 is absent, right? So only place they can go is 2100. And if they dismantle 3G, then 2100 will be 10 megahertz and 2500, where coverage is going to be a problem because 700 is the only band, low frequency band, with the latest technology BSNL has. So if you change this to 5G, then what happens? Your 4G customers are going to get a very poor quality service. Their services are going to be very, very bad. And some of the customers who are locked into 700 megahertz using carbon devices, they will lose service. They will get out of the network. So therefore, the 700 megahertz spectrum cannot be shifted to 5G without compromising on the quality of 4G users. The 4G users are immediately, as soon as you start dismantling this, they will immediately feel a loss of quality of coverage because they will have to move to the higher frequency band where the coverage is a problem. You understand now why this cannot be converted into 5G. So only 5G band BSNL has is the 3.5 gigahertz band, which is a completely useless band for mobiles. It's only for FWA. So is BSNL deploying 5G only for FWA, not for mobiles? So that is the question that you had asked. If BSNL had deployed 4G in 800 megahertz band and started using 700 for 5G, then they would have deployed SA network in par with Reliance from day one, because then there is no requirement to park their 4G customers in a different band. 800 megahertz would have been 4G, 700 megahertz would have been 5G, and then 4G you would have 2500 megahertz, 2100 megahertz, and then 800. 3 bands for 4G and 2 bands for 5G, similar to what Reliance has. And you could have done one more thing. You could have removed the 2100 megahertz spectrum and converted that to 5G. And only used to deployed 4G in 2500 and 800 and keep the 900 megahertz for 2G. So as your 4G subscribers shrink, then you would have 800 megahertz of 4G, 2500 megahertz of 4G, and 500 would have been 700, 2100, and 3500. Your 5G network would be the best in class as per the other operators are concerned, except Jio. Bharti would not have that kind of network, because 700 megahertz of 10 megahertz of 4G would have brought you in par with Reliance Jio with 2100 carrier aggregation across both these bands, all these 3 bands. Imagine the kind of advantage BSNL would have. Currently, they have nowhere to go. Now, if you dismantle this 700 and move to 800, all the work that you have done in 700 is of no use. That is why, friends, I have been saying this for last 3 years. Nobody is listening. Now you look at this spectrum strategy. Don't you think this spectrum strategy of BSNL is a complete failure? They can't even monetize their spectrum, all the money that they have spent, because they're locked in the 700 megahertz spectrum for 4G, which is actually a 5G spectrum band. Right? Now, the last strategy, 5G is a dead on arrival because of this reason. BSNL 700 megahertz 4G gear software applicable to 5G, that is fine, but lacks fallback band 800 megahertz to offload their 4G traffic. 2100 megahertz is partially occupied by 3G, limited coverage. 3.5 is earmarked for FWA, not for mobile. 5G vision for BSNL is technically possible, commercially improbable. It's a dead-on arrival. Conclusion, a public sector which has been left behind. Not because that the government has not put in money, though it was delayed, but this spectrum strategy has brought BSNL down to their heels. You cannot deploy good quality network because of this faulty spectrum strategy, which I have been saying from the very beginning. Now you ask anybody in BSNL, even their vendors are going to tell you that why the hell they have deployed 5G or 4G in 700 megahertz spectrum. Which I have been, if you look at all my writings and articles and videos 3 years back, I have been saying this, nobody is listening. Okay. Conclusion, a public sector left behind. BSNL and MTNL didn't fail by default. They were systematically weakened. That is what I think, because this is a blunder, friends. This is a blunder, right? Poor spectrum planning, talent loss, and delayed technology adoption. Revival came too late without alignment to consumer reality. The story of BSNL is a lesson how policy delays and faulty spectrum strategy has weakened a very strong player which would have bailed the consumer out from those high tariffs which we are going to see in future, because those value customer can't afford those high tariffs, and data is the fundamental right of the Indian consumer, and the government has lost an opportunity to provide affordable services to the consumer using BSNL. Thank you, friends, for your time. I hope that you like my video, and let me know if you have any comments in the comment section, and I'll come back with a new video on a new topic next time. Thank you very much, friends, for listening to the end.